Welcome. We are in chapter 10, which is a whole different kind of field. We've been looking at various ways in which the market can resolve problems, whether it's trade or what happens in taxation. We've been using consumer surplus to kind of understand the gains from a market structure, or the deadweight loss associated with taxes, or the deadweight loss associated with tariffs. We're going to move to a different setting now. We're going to talk about issues in which the market fails, in which markets can't solve certain problems without some intervention from the government or some regulation by the government in order to make the rules fair, so to speak. So in chapter 10 here, we've talked about externalities. And by now, I'm pretty sure you've heard me mention smoking is perhaps one of the most important externalities. By that, we mean that my behavior impacts others who don't participate in that behavior. So if I go and smoke and create secondhand smoke, I'm impacting the health of other people. And the question is, how does the market deal with that? The other famous example, which we're going to use today, is pollution, right? So right now there's a big controversy going on about fracking and extracting natural gas from shale oil, from shale deposits and stuff. And the question is, what are the negative externalities of digging for that natural gas? Well, there's runoff water that we potentially threaten our water reserves, etc. So those are very important negative externalities. The firms who are digging for this gas really just want to focus on, let me get the gas out of the ground and let others worry about the pollution. And what the government needs to do, or regulators need to do, is to make sure that the firms who are digging out the gas incorporate the cost of the other kinds of effects that their digging causes. So there are huge trucks on roads need repair, there are pollution issues that are profound, there are other dislocations to these counties that are having this huge influx of workers coming. And the question is, who pays for that? And hopefully, when you have an externality, that the cost imposed on others gets incorporated into the production of that good. So we've talked a lot about that, and I'm not going to pursue it too much here, because what I want to do is focus on some pretty hard problems. And we're going to focus on pollution because a big issue today in the U.S. economy is how do we deal with carbon and global warming. And a natural way to go is to say, well, let's tax it, because companies left to themselves, when they produce electricity from a coal-powered plant, for example, don't take into account the fact that the smoke goes and destroys, let's say, vegetation in upstate New York, or causes respiratory problems among kids and elderly, etc. No one takes those costs into account when they're producing the energy from coal. And that's what we need to do. So the question is, how do we do that? How does the government intervene to kind of find an optimal policy? We need industry. We need energy. Right? There's no question we have to have these resources. The bigger question is, can we do it in a way so that those who are generating this energy and this resource for us incorporate the costs imposed on others from that production? And if we do that, we'll achieve some socially optimal level of energy production, et cetera, et cetera. All right. So with that as an introduction, let's go to our problem here, because this is a classic kind of pollution problem. And if you look at your quiz here, it says, the following table, which I've drawn up here, table 10.5, shows the marginal cost for each of four firms, firm A, B, C, and D, to eliminate units of pollution from their production process. All right? So this is the cost of eliminating the first unit of pollution for firm A. It costs $54, whatever that unit may be. For firm B, the first unit of pollution would cost them $57 to eliminate. All right? For firm C, the first unit of pollution would cost $54. And that's what firms worry about. What's it going to cost me to eliminate pollution from this production process? So the firms have their cost curves, and they know that the more they produce, the more coal or electricity they produce, the greater their pollution, let's say. And therefore, the cost of abating the pollution goes up. For each firm, the cost goes up the more they produce. We have the basic structure of what's really kind of confronting some of these firms. Now, the question is, if the government charged a fee of $69 per unit of pollution, how many units of pollution would the firms eliminate altogether? In other words, the government's going to say to you, okay, for every unit of pollution, I'm going to tax you. I'm going to tax you $69 per unit of pollution. So the firm has to make this calculation. All right, should I pay the tax, or should I get rid of the pollution myself? Is it cheaper for me to get rid of the pollution, or is it cheaper just to pay the tax? So you go to the board and you say, all right, the firm A says, all right, it's going to cost us $54 to get rid of this first unit of pollution. If we pay the tax is $69. Well, that's a no-brainer. It's cheaper for me to get rid of it than to pay the government $69, in essence, for that unit of pollution. So firm A will eliminate that. Firm B does the same thing. Firm B says, well, it costs us $57 to eliminate this first unit of pollution. The government's going to charge me $69. I'll take care of it and save myself $12. So firm C does the same, D. So the first unit of pollution for all four firms is wiped out. So we've just wiped out 4 units of pollution. Go to the next row. $67. Well, this firm, it's still cheaper for A to get rid of the pollution themselves than to pay the government fine of $69, so they'll get rid of it. Firm B will get rid of it too, because for $68, it's still cheaper than the $69 you pay the government. Firm C for sure, but not Firm D. Right? Firm D says, the heck with it, right? It's going to cost us $73 to get rid of this pollution. The government's going to charge me $69 to pollute it. Forget about it. I'll pay the $69. It's cheaper for me to pay the $69 than try to get rid of it myself, which is going to cost me $73. So now you go to the next row. Well, each one of these is higher than $69. So what's going to happen is that these firms will privately abate 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 units of pollution if the government taxes them $69 per pollution. And so by setting a price, the government's forcing these firms to make decisions, which is more efficient, right? It's more efficient for these, efficient in the sense it's a lower cost solution to the problem to have the firms abate it themselves than for them to pollute and have the government charge them, because they can abate it cheaper than the $69 the government's going to charge. So the answer to the first question is obviously now 7, which is A, but I want you to see the structure of how these problems are going to work. All right, so let's go to the next one.